I don't know what's going on. Meeting is being live streamed. Okay.
Okay.
So what?
It's like a Hollywood Zoom film.
So we are going live.
I don't know what's going on. Meeting is being live streamed. Okay.
Okay.
Now I can hear myself.
So we are live right now. Okay. So.
We're live.
Okay, thank you everyone for joining our meeting concerning AI, the moratorium, and everything else. So thank you. I have a really interesting, good speakers here on this panel from Digital.Davos. Patrick, Joseph, Van from that. Thank you very much for taking part in this last minute panel, which we just organized a week ago, and being so ready to jump in and help with this very interesting subject. So I would like to take the first moment that everyone can present himself. So let's start with Patrick, and we go to Joseph, Van, and Kundev, and please present yourself. What are you doing? A little bit about you. Patrick.
Sure. So my name's Patrick Husting. I'm located up in the Seattle, Washington area. I've been in software for 30 years. And a long time ago, I used to work for Microsoft, but then found out I couldn't take direction from anybody but my wife. So it was best that I kind of start my own businesses. I've had a few successful exits. Be honest with you, I thought I was done. And I bought horses, enjoying kind of a little bit of a different lifestyle, still in tech, but and I ended up creating a solution called Ghostwriter. It's for the Microsoft Office applications. I guess you could say the innovation there is I beat Microsoft to the game by putting ChatGPT and others inside the Microsoft Office suite. So you can go to ghostwriter-ai.com to check it out.
Thank you. Joseph.
Yes. Thanks so much for having me. Joseph Webby, I work on AI ecosystem building. I led the #1 team at Timeless at my challenge in the knowledge economy 2020. I'm the World Economic AI Expert Network, where I focus on how to build the next generation of AI talent, as well as how countries can improve their national AI strategies. My full-time gig is I'm a tech co-founder of Dimeless, which we build virtual AI ecosystems for universities and large-scale enterprise. So really happy to be here and excited for this panel.
Van, please.
All right. Hey, everybody. I'm Van West. We're based down here in Newport Beach, Orange County, Southern California. Wish it was sunnier today, but I'm the founder and CEO of Vocalytics. I've been a bit of a serial entrepreneur throughout most of my career, mostly in enterprise SaaS, deep technology, IoT, edge-based, computer vision, you name it, all the nomikers right there. I've kind of been the guy that's put the business cases together and run products for a number of different companies over the last probably 15 years of my career. So I'm the founder and CEO of a company called Vocalytics, where we're helping hospitals to understand all the ambient background noise and classify them in real time to turn them into, rather than the most disruptive and most frequent annoying noises, we want to turn them into the Google Analytics of the soundscape within the patient room to drive better care, better outcomes, and ultimately helping with those reimbursements as well.
Thank you. Very interesting. Kundev. Hello.
Yes, hello. Hi. Thank you for the invite, Carl. Always good to see you and the Davos crowd. And before I disappear from the matrix, I'm Kumar Chatterjee. I wear a number of hats. Serial tech entrepreneur since I was a teenager. I know I still look like a teenager, but I put on a few years in between. And I worked a lot in the with Fortune 500s, as well as have my own companies. At the moment, I'm one of the founding members and vice chair of the World Metaverse Council, and then also with obviously with Davos, with the World Economic Forum and Interpol, I'm advising them in the metaverse too. My last company was all about AI and drones. I was before AI was cool enough to put on LinkedIn. You know, it was the pre LinkedIn AI era, and the company used AI to get a set of drones, both flying and ground robots, to work together like a human team. And I took that company to a 20 million valuation within 3 years out of the UK. Not so cool, maybe in terms of Bay Area standards, but for our little countries down here in Europe, it was okay. And then, so I have a long history with this, and I've been looking at the last 2 years at how to build large-scale metaverse. So I co-designed the Neom. I'm actually the co-founder and the co-designer of the Neom metaverse. Neom is this little town in Saudi Arabia with the world's first cognitive city. And so we were trying to build a metaverse to build that, put that online. And I think I'll stop here before Zoom gives up on me.
Okay, thank you very much. So as our audience can see, I'm really proud to have such an expert panel here. And I think we will get a lot of answers to some pressing questions, which we now saw on the media and also in different discussions. I would like to take just 5 minutes before we dive in to get to the fundamentals that people which are just learning about AI and so on get a little bit of idea. So who would like to take the first questions to establish and explain a little bit what AI is? Just like 2 minutes to explain the function from AI and how it's developed, probably going in different like neural networks and so on, explain, decipher this a little bit. Who would like to take this question first?
Do you have the questions listed somewhere? Sorry.
Yes, basically, the question is, can somebody describe AI, basically what AI is? There are two different kinds of AIs, like basically neural networks and rule-based AI. What are the differences? And go in this a little bit for our audience to set a framework.
That's not my expertise. I'll
Joseph?
somebody else.
Yeah, the way I like to explain it is, imagine you have a piece of paper and you draw some wireframes for a mobile application. So you want to clone, let's say, you want to build an application to find rental homes or properties for sale or cars for rent. You can draw up some wireframes, give it to your developer, and great, they can start coding it. But imagine if you draw a self-driving car and give that self-driving car image to someone and say, can you code it? So the difference between a regular application and an AI-powered application is an AI-powered application, the outcome is not deterministic. So there's a lot of probabilistic modeling that goes into the work, introducing a lot of randomness in the decision-making process. So there's variability in the performance. It's a lot different than just taking a regular application that you want to just build and throwing some AI on it. And the simple definition that I would say to someone is, how do you replace the cognitive abilities of a human with a machine? And that's true AI, is taking that human task and programming a computer to do that same cognitive task. And I can go more later into the outcome and why it's not deterministic in an AI project.
Okay, so we hear a lot, thank you very much. So we hear a lot of words like training AI and so on. So you were, Joseph, you were right away describing neural networks, not protocol-based AIs. So basically with a black box where they are trained. Could you just explain what people mean by training AI? So the difference from telling the software what to do at the beginning, or like training it with a big data set, and how the AI looks for different things. Can you emphasize a little bit on this?
Sure. So I'm not sure exactly, the who's in the audience, but if we don't want to get too technical, imagine you have a camera at home that you bought online from Amazon. So I have a 6-month-old son, and I have these cameras called Zmodo, which I bought from Amazon, and they're all over the house. Now, that camera has computer vision. And the way that camera was trained, maybe it's a made in China camera that's being sold in the US. That camera oftentimes gives a false notification of the type of alert, that the classification of the alert that's coming in. So for example, if the nanny that's watching the baby does a face of like an animal, it's going to detect that it's an animal or a dog that just came across the camera. So that's a black box because it was trained on some data sets in the factory in China, wherever, and it's being sold in the US, but there's no regulation. So of course it was trained on humans and a bunch of other types of objects, but there's no maybe transparency on why it's classifying that person as a dog, or not as a human, or giving a false alarm. So that's what I would say is maybe give that black box example.
Then, do you agree, or do you have something to add in Kundanet? Sorry, like I have always problems to say this name.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to add my 2 cents as well. So my last company, we took dumb security cameras and made them smart to understand people flow and really pedestrian flow throughout shopping malls and large retail environments. We took dumb security cameras, plugged the box in with our AI running on it, and suddenly the Fortune ones of the world were able to understand how many people are actually in your shopping mall or in your retail store. And we did that and guaranteed a high degree of accuracy, not just based off of some off-the-shelf model, but we actually had a team that was running what we in the industry like to refer to as ground truth to validate. And just if you think about people walking in a camera view, or each one of our faces on the screen right now, imagine there's an actual box around our faces. Imagine there's one of us that you can clearly understand as a human that is a face that doesn't have a box around it. So that ground truth would be a human like you or me, that human in the loop, essentially elements that would be placing that bounding box around that individual that's not being detected by the model, or removing a bounding box by something, an object that it thought was a human that wasn't actually a human. So it depends on what you train the model to do. It does take a level of human intervention when it comes down to the human in the loop element. We use deep learning and employed CNNs, RNNs, and a number of other techniques as well. But at the end of the day, it's tough to get to beyond that 97th percentile of accuracy, especially in harsh physical world environments, drives it even lower. So, I would just frame it as how you train a model is different than loading in a bunch of data and saying, go to work. It's loading in a bunch of data, testing it, tuning it, and then also tweaking it and having a human to validate the actual predictions that are being made by the machine.
Kumadev, thank you very much.
Patrick here. I'm going to add to Van real quick there. And I recently watched this video on basically one of the founders of the algorithm for these large language models. And because it is absolutely a black box. And for the last, 25 plus years, you've had humans, kind of like Van was saying, the data's coming in and then the humans validate it, but it's not scalable, right? At the end of the day, how many humans can you throw at classifying billions or trillions of pages of content on the internet? So they are very selective on the content that they pull into the system. But basically, the processing power that they have available to them today, what they'll do is they'll take, I'm just simplifying this, a block of text, and they will give the system all, automated. They'll give the system about 10 words, and then they ask the system to predict the 11th word. And then it's constantly refining itself as it tries to predict that 11th word and then predict the 12th word on its accuracy. It's adjusting its algorithm in real time. And so I think that goes to the whole discussion of this video cast is, do we need a moratorium or not? Because the human is being taken out of the loop for these large models to kind of build itself. And so it's really how accurate is the data coming in, and then the AI kind of classifying itself. So we have been doing it one way for years and years and years. But you could say the last couple years, at least with textual data, that the AI is AI in itself.
Yeah. I mean, also to your point, we also like that trained AI recognizing cancerous, cancerous moles on the skin at the end, found that when there's a ruler, it's a really big indication for cancers, because medical doctors used always a ruler to measure it. So when it was not cancers and the pictures was not a ruler and the other one was a ruler, and the AI right away predicted, yes, there's a ruler, it must be cancer. So, I mean, it's about training.
Yeah.
So, Dev, any thoughts to how AI functions before we go to the next question?
Yeah, so I think, having been in the space for quite a long time and looked at the development of that at a time when AI was seen as some esoteric language that you spoke in the in university, really, is that we are nowhere near artificial general intelligence, which is what the actual goal of any AI roadmap has been in any serious organization, academia, or industry in the last 20 years. So anybody who's actually a real expert in the domain will tell you that's the goal, and we're nowhere near that goal. Language models are basically next step to scaled up pattern matching. And a lot of the stuff that we're doing today in Midjourney and all of the other sort of generative AI is essentially putting together different bits of evolution in the computing infrastructure to be able to compute data faster and to be able to create let's say matches that make sense. Yeah, a real AI would be something that could teach you to drive in 24 hours. That doesn't exist today. There is no AI today that can learn by itself to drive in 24 hours. But a human being, 24 hours of training over a period of time, can learn to drive pretty well, right? That is the difference between what AI really aims to do and where we are today. So what's happening is, of course, that we have a lot of interest in what is going on right now. But if we talk to the real guys, Andrew Ng, Jan LeCun, the guys who, and actually Demi Hapsis, the guy out of DeepMind, they will tell you, look, it's great that there's a lot of interest in this now, and everybody's suddenly becoming a generative AI expert. But the fact of the matter is, in terms of the roadmap, we are not anywhere near a really AGI sort of scenario in the next 10 years. And that would be a sort of interesting milestone if we get there, right? So to me, the difference between AI, real AI, and what we are seeing today is not the word prediction. Prediction you can do. Even the late Egyptians who built the pyramids were able to predict how the whole thing would sit and not move for 3,000 years. It's cognition. Is being able to go beyond the state of prediction and being able to be cognitively aware of where you are, who you are, and what you're doing. And from that stage onwards, be able to make some predictions, right? And we're not there yet, right? And that is why I think that a lot of the AI development that we're talking about today, I would call it proto-AI, in the fact that we are still in the process of building what will really be AI. And we've got some interesting developments and milestones that we've achieved, but we're nowhere near the final goal.
Okay, this is, thank you very much. So from this, I would like to go ahead and speak about a little bit about the economic, social impacts of AI in different countries and different enterprises and society. So which are right now the leading companies and the leading countries spending the most? Let's start with the leading countries. Which countries are the leader in AI development right now? Which companies in which countries? Probably for the panel like Van or Kumadev, what you see are the leaders right now in AI development. And I know you all have companies which are leading, but just
Yeah, I mean, honestly, off the top of my head, I list China, Israel, and the U.S. has definitely put a lot of energy and effort into it as well. It's where OpenAI came from originally. So, at the end of the day, I think that Israel's definitely up there from a cyber security aspect in terms of their artificial intelligence. But just getting closer on the general artificial intelligence as well, there's so much more that they're working on today. China has an unlimited training sets because there is no privacy in China. So China will continuously evolve and be beyond anywhere else in the world, fortunately and unfortunately for the rest of the world. So those could probably be the top three for me.
Kumadev, for you, I formulate the question in a little bit other because we are in the pre-stage before we are really in the AI development. We are now in a pre-AI. So who you think, which country will run the race and have the first AI?
Excellent question, Carl, and I would separate that in two parts. One is who will be the first in the AI race to claim significant goals, and second, who is going to be let's say, the top country. I think the first in terms of claiming AI goals, although China is obviously doing a lot more than what we are doing, and as Van said, the idea of not having privacy and having access to pretty much everything gives you a massive advantage. Turns out that what we've pushed out in terms of from the US, from an old company like Microsoft, which nobody expected would jump over the hoops, happens to be ahead of what China has been doing. Anybody who looked at the Chinese avatar speaking saying the news, a year ago, remember that? That turned out to be fake in the end, right? That turned out to be fake. The thing was just orchestrated. So why is it that China, with all the talent and the access to data, is not able to crack it? It comes down to scaling the actual underlying computing infrastructure. And the advantage that we have in the US in terms of very advanced chipsets, some of which are not even on the market, which are only available to government and to specific research centers, gives us an edge. Microsoft and the others have access to that. Google has access to that, by the way. So does Facebook. So I think that ultimately, in terms of being first on the ground and waving the flag and raising the temperature, it will definitely be the US. Now, and it is the US, and that's the reality. Now, what's going to happen in 10 years' time? Clearly, China is getting there. And the advantages that they have are significant. They're learning all the time. They don't have the pressure of the stock market to go from one, to be able to stand in front of a TV screen and talk about one technology one day, another one the next day, because the stock market suddenly went from one area to another. They don't have those pressures. And these companies are in it for the long run. It's just the general Chinese mentality to always go for the long, look at the long term and not look at what's immediately in the next quarter or the next year that we do in the West. So, and you can see the effects of that. They have stable banks because in the sense that the banks are nationalized anyway, whether it's private or not. So you've got a system of innovation there that is long-term, focused on goals, and they have identified AI as being a national security issue long before the US identified it as a national security issue. So I think in the long run, my bet would still be that China will come out with certain innovations that will triumph over what we've done. But overall, I think we in the West, particularly the US, Japan, UK, and other countries will get together and do a better job because our innovation is more open and is more diverse. How many Americans do you know working in Shanghai University? How many top, British or Australian or Singaporean innovators do you see working in the top Chinese companies? People who worked in Chinese companies will tell you it's mostly Chinese top down. And I think the difference that we have with our open society is open innovation and diversity in the way that we approach these problems will ensure that although there might be short-term sort of setbacks or short-term sort of we haven't got there yet, ultimately we will be very good at this technology as we have been over other technologies in other fields and areas.
Yeah, if I can add to that, because that was excellent, that Kuma did. In the free countries, if you will, I think the ability to innovate is a very powerful thing. And I've been in software for over 30 years. I've worked, at very high levels at Microsoft and seen a lot of stuff. You don't win by copying. Maybe if you're a monopoly and you could copy and force people out by embedding certain things in your operating system, maybe. But you don't win by copying somebody else's solution and hoping to get it 3 or 4 years later. It just doesn't work that way. And the diversity is an absolutely powerful statement that he had, because it does take a lot of different minds to come together and to work together to solve difficult problems. And if everybody is thinking and talking the same language, you're not going to get anywhere very fast. But I'm going to give you a little outside note. I am not an expert on the models or anything like that. All I did was I created a solution on top of it that just kind of blew up around the world. I'm thankful for that. And my solution is basically sold into every country. And in my 30 years, I've never sold one piece of software to one country. Can anybody guess? China. Even the horse app that I have, it's the largest application for managing horses worldwide, and it's in every country in the world. There's horses in every country in the world, even China. But I've never sold one copy in China because my app was banned. Up until I created this add-in for Microsoft Office, this Ghostwriter Office or add-in, and I have sold over 500 licenses into China, blew my mind, and I would say about 400 of those individuals are professors. What's shocking about that is OpenAI is blocked in China, but they're using my add-in every day. So you know how they use it to get around it. So again, just to validate Kuma's excellent response to your question is you're not going to win by copying.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great to hear that you sold into China. You should write a book on that, because that's a lot of companies are desperately trying to do that. And yeah, it's a wall. You can't get past it.
The digital firewall.
Yeah.
So I want to move it to the main discussion right now, which is about the social impact and so on from AI, which we are already on the train on it. I just wanted to, I have here another question which we have to ask. So we saw a lot of risks also with AI, where AI was going wrong. So that can everyone just mention one of the risks which comes to the mind? For example, for me, Taybot comes right away to the mind, which was shocking. what was coming out? I asked our panel, please not to repeat anything but Tay was saying. The audience, you can look it up by yourself. It was an experiment from, I think, Microsoft. Please correct me when I'm wrong.
Microsoft? That's right.
Okay, Microsoft and basically it will blow up. But this is only one thing. So anyone, short, 30 seconds, one example where AI was absolutely going wrong. Patrick, it shows it.
Sure. So I have a professor of microbiology that uses my add-in for his research work. And he messaged me one day and he says, hey, how can I get the references or the citations of what the AI is creating in my document? And I said, well, at the end of your prompt, just ask for it. Ask for the citation and links. And so he did. And it comes back with these citations and they're beautiful. I'm reading this. I have no idea about microbiology, but I'm reading it. It looks good to me. Well, he's a really smart man. And so he goes, I know this organization. They're out of the Netherlands. He sends that document to them and says, can you validate these citations for me? They come back a week later. He said, we have reviewed this extensively and we found that these citations are absolutely not ours.
Okay.
But it sounded perfect.
Joseph, where AI was
there's definitely. I mean, from firsthand experience, something really basic, but we can maybe overlook it. Like I said, I'm in the Middle East at the moment. You would think that Google Map wouldn't lead you to do something dangerous, you're driving somewhere, and I was in a country where Google Map obviously works. On this one street, there happens to be a government building, and in that government building, it's their version of a secret police, and they turned a two-way street into a one-way street. But I'm driving down the street, and Google Map tells me to turn left into this one-way street. That's all armed police standing outside that are, plain clothes, and putting your life in danger in the hands of Google Map, trusting the system that it wouldn't steer you down that road. So it's this whole idea of transparency and having stakeholder buy-in and everyone participating. So I really like everyone's comments so far, but there's many examples, but that's just one simple example of Google Map going wrong in a really dangerous situation.
Thanks, Joseph. Thanks, Scott. You were not driving a self-driving car which was steering you down this road, and you could join our panel today. Van, one example that I'm going totally wrong.
Happy to. So my last company, making sense of security camera footage in the physical world, we did a lot of diligence in where the state of that technology was, I'm going to say 8 to 10 years ago, as we were coming to market. And we found some examples, actually from a couple of our customers cited these examples, where there was a company in China that was, and obviously, it's a police state, so they only allow a few residents into the main Hong Kong proper on a daily basis. You really only are allowed to spend so much time in the city because it's so overpopulated. So there was a picture of a model, a giant bus with a photo of a model's face on it that made, I think it was a left or a right turn at a stoplight when one direction of stoplight was red. Those cameras actually recognized who that was through her social scoring system and mailed her a traffic ticket. Because her picture was on a bus, they thought she was jaywalking. So there's examples like this all day long. That's a very clear example of how China, 8 to 10 years ago has probably advanced a lot since then. But the Microsoft Twitter experiments, I think, have gone horribly wrong. I think Facebook's had some missteps in that as well. There's just a long way to go.
Thank you. Kumadev, for you, pre-AI, so we know when it goes to the real AI, how you say, to error is human, then we will have much more fun, which things may go wrong or not, but is it not essential yet? Something which was going wrong, which you have like as a prime example.
Yeah, and it's great you mentioned the human side, because I think that's exactly what took off. And I'll talk about Google. They created these two programs. It's real. So the engineer who got fired and talked about it, he was saying the truth. I have a lot of friends in Google over the years, and even now at all levels. So I know the story. So those two pieces of software were created. In fact, they were created.
You speak about Alison Bob?
Yeah, exactly. And they were created and given those names. It's not a reference to Lady Addison and the computer science reference that we have. They actually wanted to create a male-female type of coding to see, can you actually have that kind of emotional response? And then these two things, the software, obviously they took off, they created their own language within, I think it was 18 hours or something. And they started to communicate with themselves in a way that nobody else, including the engineers who wrote the algorithms to write the language. So the engineers behind the language model couldn't anymore decode the language because they had their own language model, which had nothing to do, or it was so derivative from the original one that you couldn't trace it back, right? And it did come up with some pretty dangerous responses. And so the poor guy who got fired had said it was sentient. When sentience is another term that we can define or not, but it actually went to that limit. And I think a lot of people say, why didn't Google release something like ChatGPT when they have DeepMind, when they have Boston Dynamics, and they have some of the top engineers and AI computer scientists in the world in their ranks? Is because of that incident. Is that they suddenly learned that trying to make AI human, which was kind of the goal of that experiment, is probably a way off, and we shouldn't try to do that. Guess why they tried to do that? You know why? That famous experiment, if a car's coming down the street and you're driving at a speed, and if you brake, people in the car will die, including you, and if you don't brake, the people crossing the pedestrian walk will die. What do you do? And Google was trying to solve that by saying, oh, how would a human respond? Because the AI was like, kill the people on the street and just carry on, right? So would a human respond differently? And that's why they came out with Alice and Bob, and they realized maybe we are a little bit away from the point where we can trust the technology to be still under our control beyond a certain point.
Okay, so just yes and no, just around the panel. Do you agree or disagree with the statement? Modern companies refusing to adopt AI will lose the competitive advantage within the next 5 years. Yes or no?
Yes.
Van?
Yes.
Joseph?
Yes.
Patrick?
You said modern companies?
Like a company, like in modern days, a company, like not adjusting to AI.
Yeah, it's pretty general, but I would say yes and no, right? It depends on the company and what they do.
So,
That's a tough one.
okay.
If it was a modern company that relies heavily upon automation, yes.
I mean, some, of course, when you have a traditional company where you are proud of doing something traditional like a liquor distillery, which is exactly done and you never changed the distill since the 1800s. You probably will not implement the AI because you won't have it, but probably you will have it by your marketing material to write something.
I think it's more along the line of the profession or the individual.
Well, okay.
So I'm gonna just take a stab at this from a very traditional business perspective. I've got a good buddy of mine that has these amazing strawberry farms, and he's in Costco and a number of other large distributors. He's been doing this for a very long time. So he grows strawberries. Simple, but also very different every single day. Just weather conditions, climate, especially here in California right now, been all across the board in the last 3-4 months. So it's not as repeatable as an automation project in terms of caring for the strawberries or picking the strawberries, but he's actually started to build his own robots to have lights, and rather than pesticides, lights zap the bugs overnight, and to make sure that they're picked at the most opportune time as well during their development. Every strawberry is incredibly unique as well. So even as traditional the base of a business as agriculture, horticulture, I think there are a lot of great applications. And even if you're a plumber, there's still robots that can probably automate portions of your job. And, you know, again, to your point, Patrick, even if it is just creating marketing content or optimizing your website, there's still lots of great use cases for AI for traditional businesses too.
Thank you. So let's go, before we go to the question moratorium, yes or no, let's go to the question. What is your perspective on AI danger to humanity and help for humanity? So in general, how you feel about it. And it is clear also then most people here on the panel, or everyone on the panel, works in AI and has to do a lot with AI. We also get worried. We get worried when we get the ideas of a smart virus attacking a computer system. We get worried when we see something used for deep fake and going up in the news and be viral spread, and innocent people get hurt. So what is your perspective of AI, where AI helps humanity and where AI is really used against humanity? Patrick.
Okay, so when I first started playing around with it, I found it very fascinating because I was replacing developers, even though I'm a developer, and kind of replacing myself. It was augmenting my work. And then it was writing my marketing. And then it became doing so many other things for me. It even wrote a legal contract for me for a consulting engagement that I was sending to an attorney because I was consulting for a law firm on AI, and he thought it was 100% perfect. So AI, from the perspective that I use in the industries that I'm in, it's going to greatly affect the people that make over $100,000 a year. So the white collar jobs. So if you're creating content, you're writing code, you're doing legal work, you're doing some medical work, it's going to greatly affect those industries. At first, I thought maybe it would just augment them and make them smarter, better, faster, and a little cheaper. But now I believe the productivity gains that we're going to get in white collar positions will result in the elimination of a lot of white collar positions.
Thank you. Van, your perspective?
I'm from an ethical stance, I'm always going to be in the boat that AI's purpose is not to replace humanity, it's to augment humanity. So there is a level of disruption that society is experiencing right now that has never been experienced before in the world of ChatGPT, creating essays and even answering interview questions, or creating marketing content, structuring your website. There's so much automation that's going on to what you would have paid a marketing agency for before. So there's a level of disruption in replacing jobs that I think we just need to be mindful of the transition, and really, I would say, upskilling humans to then leverage AI technologies to also build more knowledge workers in society. So I mean, honestly, I'll go back to Hollywood and say, if you guys have ever watched Westworld or The Terminator, that's where all this stuff starts. It's to use those as ways to prevent that from happening to us in the real world today.
Yeah.
Yosef?
Yeah, I would say really the dangers are in the education system at the grassroots. So elementary schools, high schools, the students that are not using it properly, and the teachers that are also not educated and introducing it into their curriculum, or educating the students on the proper use cases, eliminating that critical thinking layer. So all this talk about AI, it's always been there, but the user interface didn't exist, or it wasn't accessible to most people. So now that all of a sudden the world has seen the benefits, we have to really be careful on how to kind of use it for good, and help the next generation of talent to become builders of AI, not just consumers of AI. So it's one thing to consume the technology, but that doesn't build the next generation of AI talent. And really, I think, as Patrick said earlier about the people, there's stakeholders or people in this ecosystem that have goals. These stakeholders need to have a pathway to achieve those goals. So I would really maybe have this question or question around the benefits in different ecosystems, because the ecosystem that exists in Boston, in Silicon Valley, in New York, doesn't exist in the heartland of the US or in other emerging technology hubs. So we need to be inclusive and also bring those other stakeholders in so they can also benefit from the technology.
Thank you. Kumadev, your perspective.
Sorry. So I think this is a very interesting question for me, because obviously the low-hanging fruits are that you're going to get automated and repetitive tasks being done by AI, leaving humans more time to do more creative things, etc. But I think there's a bit of I would say short-sightedness on that, because in the sense that by the time AI is widely deployed, it will be doing a lot more than just the repetitive and automative tasks. It will be the creative engine of your company. If you look at what Midjourney is doing already, and it's far from an AI, actual AI. It's just mind blowing, right? And it gets better every day. 6 months from now, when we look at these very same companies and tools, DALI and all these other guys, the kind of output that they'll be producing, you will have to think, you will have to start justifying as a CEO. You'll have to start justifying why you should not have a DAL-E subscription and one manager versus 4 creatives and 2 managers. You're going to have to really sort of justify that to yourself first, and then to your board and the rest. So we are going to see actually I think we're going to see a lot more jobs and a lot more category of jobs being taken away than we imagine at the moment. And that's normal because, of course, we always underestimate what is going to happen. And then when things happen, we're like, we adjust our estimations. So on that side, I feel that we are going to have a lot of things that will fundamentally change. I was going to show you guys this little image today, which is a tree. And you have a ChatGPT developer looking very cool. And he is using a saw to cut off the branch. And next to him is a normal developer. But sitting on his left is ChatGPT itself, cutting off the whole branch on which both the normal developer and the ChatGPT developer is, because ChatGPT will not need developers after a point. And who's at the bottom of the tree cutting off the entire tree? Italy is cutting off the entire tree. Italy will be is a symbolism for EU and other countries that will cut that off, right? So I think the idea that we are dealing with a technology that we can sort of control the roadmap and growth, and we'll come to this question, the moratorium, is just a fanciful idea. And within 6 months, many people who today signed that letter will come back and say, sorry, we never expected what was coming. And so we're taking back our words. So that, I think, is both bad and good. Good because, of course, we will have more time to do other things. Good because a lot of the things that today are more expensive than they need to be, we're taken away. But you've got to think about that vis-a-vis the human evolution side. We are still a planet that's growing pretty fast in terms of the total population. What are people going to do? If AI can manage everything from agriculture to the type of pattern that you have on your napkin next to the agriculture that's on your plate, what are people going to do? And the short-term answer is that nobody knows, including governments. No one has an idea what people are going to do. So what do you think people are going to do? People are going to turn to doing things that were probably today is under control because you follow a routine. So that was, in the short term, I think will lead to more social turmoil, not less. And that will lead to more insecurity than less. So for me, while we are thinking about what's great about AI, and first of all, we need to stop underestimating how fast this is going to develop. And on the other side, we need to be realistic about the fact that this development will bring real problems to the streets that today is under control because a lot of people are, quote unquote, as Benjamin Franklin said and Bertrand Russell said, quote unquote, gainfully engaged during the maximum of their working hours. When you're no longer gainfully engaged in the maximum of your working hours, what are you going to do with all the energy that you have and all the ideas that you have? I think that's a question which we're all going to face.
And the question, of course, goes also to how economic functions like this. There were several people which wrote about the Star Trek universe, which is like so fantastic, no money and so on. And we're really looking at this from an economic point of view. What would be when we would have replicators which could produce everything which we want and we don't have to buy it anymore in the store? I mean, the economy would, we would have war. We would have terrible, it would be like at least civil unrest. So seeing this major shift in employment, people becoming more productive, but also basically having more time on themselves. And probably some people become unemployable because it takes time to learn to use the new tools. And when you are not grown up with this, then probably even when we live longer, our retirement age becomes sooner. So this shifts the whole burden of productivity, who pays for it, and so on. So there will be a lot of big questions to answer. when we speak about this problems which may hit the society or may not hit the society, the questions arise how to deal with it. And of course, Elon Musk, we all speak about this with several other ones. Steve Wozniak, I think, signed a letter for a memorandum of AI training for an AI which is more capable than ChatGPT to establish an ethical framework what AI can do. It is also the questions if AI will be used against humanity, if it will develop in a like misuse and all these regulations. So what is your perspective on this memorandum? I mean, you already let the sack out of the cat out of the sack. I apologize for my English. So there, let me start with you and Kumadev, and then we go. Okay, the audience should see it. I have all you guys in a row there, so it was always back and forth. Kumadev, please.
Sure, Carl. And so before I do that, I'm going to show you guys, I'm going to share my screen and I hope I can share it. Carl, you might need to enable that.
Yeah, one second.
The screen sharing. Let me, okay, so, righto. Okay.
1 second,
Do you, I think you might have, yeah, I think might be, no. I don't know where to do that actually. It must be a button somewhere.
You can now share your screen.
Okay, super. So I close that and tick, tick, tick. So I asked a question to the actual, to the company that, or the software or the AI bot or whatever it is that we call it. I asked him the question, I said, look, guys, what do you think of the, if a 6-month moratorium on the development of AI, as Elon Musk and thousands of experts have suggested, a good idea? And I did that. I don't know if you can see the timing on this, but I did that just when we started the call. And so this is the official quote unquote response from ChatGPT-4, not ChatGPT, saying it doesn't have a personal opinion, which is, I think, Microsoft telling it not to try to be human, but I can provide you with a balanced perspective. And so it starts listing the rationale for why these experts are asking for that: safety and ethical considerations, preventing an AI arms race, which I find very funny as one of the reasons, but I'll come to that. Public awareness, I think, okay, again, interesting. But the fourth point, I think, is very relevant to what you were saying, Carl: regulation and governance, right? And the next image, I hope is the right image. Oops, it's not the right image. Let me try to share that again. Yeah, and so can you see the second image? So you can see here that it says regulation governance can provide governments worldwide to develop and implement effective regulatory frameworks for AI technologies. And then it goes into what the critics of that would say. So slowing down innovation, competitive disadvantage, ineffectiveness, and unintended consequences, right? And so this is what ChatGPT says. Now, I think that some of these points are on one side, some of them on the other. I'm good, but for me, if you go through that, there are two issues here. Do we need regulation and governance of AI? Absolutely. Does that get affected by what ChatGPT and ChatGPT-4 and other models like Midjourney and others are doing? I don't fundamentally think that they have changed the game so much that we need to rewrite the AI frameworks and regulation. In Europe, for example, this is what Italy has done. You can't actually take data like that and create pictures like that, or you can't actually go and create a picture of the Pope, even though it's a public figure, by just putting on, something, a jacket on him or something like that. And you can't do many of the things that you can do in the US because you don't have the sort of privacy protections that we have. So this is a question more of of countries that are advanced in AI and are moving fast, such as the US, actually having the necessary regulatory and governance frameworks to manage that, right? You should have had that before. You didn't consider it at that point because maybe it wasn't that important to the society. But today, society has woken up and said, oh, these things are actually important. In Europe, we've always been very cautious. We've always been overtly cautious. This is why the joke in Europe is that what do AI companies do when they want to grow up in Europe? They fly to the US, right? That's the joke that we've had for some time, but it's true. It's what we do. What happens to a lot of the European innovation is that we just go over to the US and try and scale from there. But the protections that were put into place, which were not at that point focused on AI, was focused on privacy, it was focused on big tech like Microsoft and Google and Facebook, taking Europeans' data and monetizing that without sharing anything. It was based on those considerations. And then the EU came up with the AI bill very presciently two years ago, before this happened. And now the bill just needs to be tweaked a little bit to manage these things. So this is not an AI problem for me. This is a problem of how a society approaches regulation. If you go to a place like China, as we were just talking about that, there is no privacy at all. And so in terms of what the government the data they can take from you. So in that context, privacy would be like, oh yeah, what's that all about? And there are some other countries which have other restrictions. For example, there are multiple countries in the world where you cannot show certain beach scenes or certain party scenes. See.
Sorry, just a question. When we speak about data and data privacy, in your answer, before I go ahead, by data privacy, you speak about the data gathered or the data which is absorbed by the AI in the decision making. So basically, as a user, you start also training the AI, which you're probably not aware of, and you give confidential data probably from your company or your private life, from an artwork into the AI, which becomes part of the knowledge from the AI and will be used by the next client to make his work better. So basically you transfer knowledge and artwork and so on to the next client, or do you speak from data gathering policy for governments to more efficiently basically put Cambridge Analytica on steroids?
Great question, Carl. For me, the primary concern, and I think what
sorry, also, can you stop the screen share?
Yes. So great question. And so the primary concern that I have around this, and I think what is really driving a lot of the concern globally, is that you share some data. Take a practical example. You go to let's say a vacation with your friends or your family, and you share a nice picture of you and your family or somewhere on the beach or whatever it is, right? And this is available on Instagram or Facebook or whatever, and it's shared up with a small group or is shared maybe with your friends there. And the AI is able to pick that picture up because it's able to share data with these companies and get that data from to do that. And then it takes that data and creates an image of you in a very violent pose in a completely different context. So what is the issue here? The issue here is that first of all, you never gave permission to any of the companies, including the ones where you published your data, that they could be used in this manner where they can create a realistic representation of you without your consent, right? One thing is I put a picture of myself on the beach and somebody else takes that and shows it off. Okay, that's a violation, but it's a smaller violation. Another thing is somebody takes a picture of me in the beach and then puts me in a suit holding a gun and threatening other people, which was completely unreal. And if you think this is not happening, I don't know how many of you guys know, The Guardian, which is one of the top newspapers in the UK, found out that ChatGPT-4 was creating on the fly very realistic Guardian articles that Guardian had never written. So they were not only creating the articles, they were attributing them to real journalists and saying this is an authentic Guardian article, and it looked and sounded so authentic that the journalists who were working in that field and whose names were there, they were like, oh, maybe we wrote this and forgot about it. And then they found out after searching that, hey, we never wrote this. So here you're going beyond the idea of privacy as you're taking from me something that I didn't consent to give you, to an idea where you are creating an image of me, a representation of me, which I have never allowed you to do. Whether it's real or fake, or whether I will do that or not is another question. I never allowed you to create a representation of me in the way that you are doing. So the question actually shifts, and these are the questions we need to answer. But if I come on the idea of the moratorium from technology, I think that's where what ChatGPT said about competitive advantage and pace of innovation absolutely applies. What kind of moratorium are we talking about? These are the world's top experts in their domains. And are they really saying that that by clicking fingers, we can stop the development of AI across the world? It's impossible. Even if you were to do that voluntarily, it would take you 2 years to get a little treaty on moratorium. So the people who have written this letter, they know, and they knew from the beginning that this was a nonsense proposition. So the point of the proposition was never to be serious about having a moratorium. The point of the proposition was to say, hey guys, we admit that we have been left behind and we've been blindsided by how fast some of these companies are moving. And we are trying to get a level playing field by asking you to voluntarily stop in the public interest, right? So that is what this moratorium is all about. And I think that is very wrong, because that is, against all principles of innovation, research, human demodevelopment, and competitive advantage, right? Or not. Let's keep
for your opinion, is the moratorium is basically to gain development advantage over other ones, nothing else, and try to gain political leverage over it.
Yeah, and say, hey, look, it's like you're in a field of you're a group of kids they're trying to run the race, and then one guy or one of the athletes figures out a secret way of running 25% faster than everyone else, and he comes to the next race, right? And he starts running, and people are like, hey, hold on, you cannot run like that. Why not? No, you can't run like that, because running that fast could be dangerous. It could have impacts on the public who are looking at you. They might think you're fake, etc. So please voluntarily slow down. And by the way, help us get to your stage. I mean, come on, this is not an argument, right?
Okay. Thank you.
An argument. And just to finish up, and I know I want to give the space to the other people here. If you look at what Jan LeCun and has just said, and Andrew Nick just said today, I'm putting this article on the chat so that people can look at it. I think what they said was very relevant. Is that, look, guys, let's be real over here. This is not about saving the world from AI. This is about creating a level playing field from those people who have not invested or have not spent the effort to make the advancements that some of these companies have done, and now they want to pull them back. I would think that anybody who wants to support that from a purely ethical standpoint should take that particular ethic into play. That does not mean that this rapid development does not pose a lot of dangers in terms of privacy and in terms of other aspects, but we can deal with that through our legal and social frameworks, not by forcefully stopping them or asking them to stop forcefully. That's my position on that.
Thank you. Who wants to answer this question next?
I can go. So great points, Kumar. I mean, essentially what you're trying to say is there's a shortage of independent experts. In a fully functioning AI ecosystem, for example, in Boston, there's 8 stakeholders that make up an ecosystem. You have the AI scientific advisors, the AI centers of excellence, the students, the platform companies, the executive sponsors, the government stakeholders, the practitioners. Everyone has a different goal in AI. The idea is, how do you help those stakeholders to achieve their goal? Because now they're just looking at it from the outside. There is no single federal agency in the US, at least, that has the sole responsibility of regulating AI. So I'm definitely against this moratorium, but it's like, where are you asking, or who cares about it? So the stakeholders in the US are different than the stakeholders in Italy, different than the stakeholders in Nigeria or Saudi Arabia. Maybe Nigeria doesn't care about banning ChatGPT, but the stakeholders in Italy do. So how do you get those stakeholders to come together to build a localized AI ecosystem? Because it's all about those stakeholders that are there locally and what goal do they have. If we're going to continue like this with a short experts, there's not going to be anyone that can regulate the work. Who's going to do it? The healthcare system in the US is regulated by the FDA, the CDC. Of course, they have doctors and healthcare professionals that are independently working in the field, but there's no such thing in AI. So it all starts at the AI centers of excellence and the AI scientific advisors that need to lead this so that the next generation of talent can learn from them. And it comes down to regulation is very linear and slow, but the advancements is exponential, and they're just not matching. So we need to figure out how to make it happen.
I'll jump in here next. There's no way they're going to get a moratorium, right? It's already out of the bag. The cat's out of the bag and running fast. And so nobody's going to kind of stop this. And if we're going to look at, then people say, well, we need government regulation on that. Well, that's the last thing we want. Yeah, we do have the FDA as an example, but I think we also know that the FDA is kind of has its own mission, and you could kind of say they're also corrupt too, right? They take funds from certain large companies for research also. So, could the government regulate it? No. I think we all look at the government today and worry about, what's actually going on there. I do appreciate Elon Musk, though. He steps out there in a big way and he does some really big, amazing things. And when he says we need to be worried about AI coming alive, if anybody else said that, I'd probably kind of giggle, right? But I do take him kind of serious. But again, he's trying to tell Google and OpenAI, which he founded, right? He helped found that, and others to stop your development or putting things out there. Kuma mentioned a little while ago that one of the leaders in AI development is Microsoft. No, they're not. They're far from it. They've been doing it for 30 years there in their research arm, and they created Tay, which was an angry, racist, scary AI system. They just happened to give OpenAI a lot of money, access to it, and servers to process the data, but Microsoft didn't develop their solution, and they're trying to frantically put it into Bing and their other applications. So Microsoft doesn't want to stop it because they're up against Google and they're up against Apple and they're up against Amazon. Amazon probably got something cooking in the kitchen. So the cat's out of the bag. We're going to run against this as fast as we can. I like to beat up on Microsoft because they're local, but they did lay off their entire AI ethics team. So then you don't have to say, oops, we made a mistake. That's what they're going to say, when the AI flips everybody off and turns off power somewhere, let's say. Their ethics team might have stopped them from that. Who knows? But if you don't have an ethics team, you can do whatever you want and fail spectacularly. I'll throw it over to Van. I want to hear his response.
Yeah, and I think I agree with everybody on this panel. And I'm gonna be brief here because I know we're a little over as well. The moratorium was never gonna stop. I don't care how many signatures he gets, it was never gonna stop AI development globally, even locally, for 6 months or for any given period. It was meant to be a warning sign. And it's kind of like, as a society, you just have to be able to read through those lines. So the fact of the matter is it's been caused too much havoc in saying, oh, well, should we stop? Or did we stop? How do we pause this? Or do we? It's created too much conversation around that. And it hasn't created enough conversation around the glaring warning that it poses. So, in my opinion, the only way to stop its growth is like stopping the reliance from an energy perspective on oil and gas. That's been going on for a long freaking time, and we're not exactly switching the grid over overnight. It's not going to happen in 6 months to stop developing oil and gas and producing oil and gas. It's not going to stop for 6 months to stop developing and producing AI solutions. Even though AI is much smaller than the reliance on energy and gas, you could arguably say it's much larger because it touches every industry and every position at every level of society. And it's only going to continue to grow. So yeah, I think just keep it simple, read between the lines, be ethical about what you're building is really the key there. That's the key insight to pose from this. And just to put it briefly on the head, build ethically.
Thank you very much, everyone. I have several questions left, and I was just looking to this question, and I know we are already on a really long panel. So I just, to wrap it up, 2 questions which are really provocative. And please choose one to answer from these 2 questions. The first one was basically, we create AI. It's not AI which will spread the harmful news or fake news. It's humans which misuse the AI in the same way like guns don't kill, it's humans which kill. So this is quite a provocative question. I would stay personally away from this one.
Oh, I want that
the
one.
other one is basically, where is it again? Yeah, will we see, because of AI, a scandal like Cambridge Analytica during the next elections?
Interesting.
Which question you would answer?
I'm gonna go first. I want to take the one you won't take. So, yeah, when let's go back to Microsoft Tay. You brought that up early on how scary, racist, and hateful that it became in less than an hour. And why was that? Well, it was because it was programmed by humans with a certain view, and then the people that started using it, via Twitter, basically were looking for a way to break it and hack it. And the language that they used was able to do that. It's no different than using ChatGPT today, right? I use it every day. Gosh, it feels like 12, 14-hour days today. And I help a lot of people, thousands and thousands of people use this add-in around the world, and they're using it for good, right? They're creating content, they're rewriting maybe their poor language, right? I have people write something in French and output it in English. I think that's just badass in the way it should be used. It should be used for good to augment and make us smarter and more productive. But just like with ChatGPT, the journalists and the different kind of hackers, the Dan, I think it was called, you could turn it into Dan and it could say anything it damn well wanted. And it started saying hateful things and saying some rather kind of humorous things. So there's going to be a set of people that will want to use the technology for good, kind of like I think what Van said a little while ago. And then there are just plain evil, stupid people looking for clicks. We're going to have them.
Thank you. Joseph, which question you would like to answer?
Yeah, I'll take the first question. I think really the problem is the barrier to achieve AI goals is really high. And we can't lower the barrier, because if we lower that barrier, you remove the educational merit. So we need to redesign the entry margin to AI. It's different for a stakeholder to be a consumer of AI than to be a builder of AI. And I always encourage, if we're talking about using AI for good, it's to build a generation of builders of AI, not just consumers of it.
Thank you. Kumadev?
Yeah, sorry, where are you seeing these questions? Or just the ones?
Okay, the first question, there's one question. Please answer one out of the 2 questions. Basically, the same comment which often is done about weapons, like it's not the gun which kills, it's the human which kills. is used also for AI. It's not the AI which produces fake news or something, it's a human. Or this other question would be, will AI play a significant role in the next election and be a scandal like Cambridge Analytica scandal a long time before? Which one you would like to answer?
I'll answer the first one because the answer to the second one is obviously yes. So let's answer the first one.
Okay, both. Thank you.
Let's answer the first one. I think the first one is very interesting because this is the question of the who is the progenitor. So yeah, TAI went off the track, and as I think Van mentioned there, it was because the people who programmed TAI or the databases that TAI relied on more than the people who programmed them reflected who we are as a society. And that's what we are as a society. It just held up a mirror to who we were, and it gave back to us what we see around us, but choose to ignore, right? So that I think was what happened there. But the interesting question is that if we as a species, as this dominant species, number one predator on this planet, if we are programming and trying to create a system that is more, at least as intelligent, and if not more intelligent than us, then can we avoid the biases that we have and all the defects that we have from creating that system? And I think we can't. And I think that it's a false goal to try and expect that we will have an AI that is as intelligent as us, but even more ethical than we are. And I think that's why some of these ethical teams have to rethink the process, because we can't infuse ethicality into AI simply on the basis of some frameworks. They will get over that because as a society, we are not ethical, right? So I think the question really is here, when you talk about this is that classical philosophy. I mean, AI is one aspect of it. I mean, it's a classical philosophical question. If the trainer is corrupt, can the trainee be pure? Or can the trainee be honest if the trainer is corrupt? And I think the trainee can be honest if the trainee is able to overcome the same defects in thinking that the trainer has. And so that is where I believe the focus lies, is that, yes, you need to be able to think about this slightly differently and say, at the moment we are learning, majority of AI, quote unquote, today, pre-AI, proto-AI, 95% or more of that is pure learning. What are we learning? We're learning what we already have. We're not learning what we expect to have, right? But very soon, this AI will start to create new knowledge or things that were created without a link to learning. You've got to read into that. There's a new way of doing things in which you don't have to necessarily learn for 20 hours before solving the problem. And what will happen is that will generate a new set of knowledge and a new set of rules of interaction that will hopefully not have the biases that we as a society have. So I think over time, AI will, and this is a term I like to use, self-cleanse. It will self-cleanse in the sense that what we're seeing today is the natural step of the roadmap that AI has to go through to get to a point where it is able to be more ethical than the progenitors who have actually created that. So that is my answer to that. And I just quickly, if I have 10 seconds, reply to what my friend Jay, who's watching our YouTube, asked me the question: red pill or blue pill? And of course, we've got to go with the red pill.
Thank you. Van.
Yeah, so I'm going to echo most of that, and the conversation starts with bias. So the answer to your second question, also, I will echo Kumar's response on the Cambridge Analytica and the next election. And yes, of course, in fact, both candidates, both parties are going to be using very degrees of that. Every candidate's going to have their own tool, just like a ChatGPT for elections. So I think it's just a slam dunk. The first question, going back to the response on bias and all of that and ethics, I just look at this as there's kind of two pieces here. There's number one, you've got the App Store, right? And you've got Apple and Google have a scanner for every app that's uploaded to the App Store, where it's checking for certain things that could be potential malware, that could be stealing identity and information from an end user's device by using that application. Lots of other things as well. And I spent a past role in cybersecurity, and we were that partner for Google. So I've got a little bit of in-depth knowledge and application on that side. I would just say that for AI applications to be developed, there should be these ethical guiding, call them principles, where they should screen the AI, screen the model, screen the engine, screen the screener as well. Where it's really, you go back to Hollywood as well. You look at the Terminator, you look at Westworld, you look at any one of those movies, iRobot. The AI or the robots started with these guiding ethical principles. I think that's what it comes down to with this moratorium as well, is creating what those actually are. Just like the App Store, Apple's App Store has those privacy labels on all the apps, creating what those standards should actually be, coming to a consensus as a race more than anything else of what those standards should be. You've got, from a privacy legislature perspective, you've got GDPR in the last 8 to 10 years. You've got CCPA out here in California, just privacy legislature in general. Chicago's got their own, Illinois got their own version of that as well. Every state in America is going to have their own, every country is going to have their own. Brazil already has LGBT. So understanding ethical legislature, I think, is the next gradual step. And I do agree with Kumar in having that AI cleanse itself along the way as it grows as well, and having kind of those self-check milestones has to be a part of that framework, where it's not just, hey, this is in order to get to market, you have to be XYZ, these guiding principles. But I think it has to check on I don't know, whether it's a time-based or a performance-based check. You've done this much compute, so you have to recheck the model to understand the level of bias, to then create an unbiased or less biased in a particular direction of that model. Or it's purely just based around time. And time's irrelevant really when it comes to the development of technology, especially with AI. It's kind of why I go back to just the computational aspects of it as well. So that's kind of my general thought, is creating those principles as a race is more important than trying to build legislature to withhold this power from society. The power can be great, or the power can be the opposite of great. It's what we do with it, and it's how we guide it. And, you know, if we can create those fundamental principles and that kind of self-check process, that self-learning, self-check process as an industry, as a society, I think there's going to be less mishaps along the way, turning the world into the Terminator or Westworld.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much. Yusuf, did we have also your response to this question?
Yeah, I think I got my response.
Okay. So thank you very much, everyone, for this great panel, really informative, and I appreciate the time which you dedicate to get your knowledge across to Digital.Davos audience. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Great to meet everyone.